3.5 is finally here, and so is the new character Hysilens. And in this video, I'm going to be taking you over everything you do need to know, including an overview on her kit, best Lightcones, best relics, best ornaments, relic stat recommendations for Mainstat and Substats, stat priorities that you mainly want to hit that might be important, and at the very end, some team building ideas. Before we do get into the video though, check this out. Have you ever heard of a site called Bahomu? Well, now you have. Bahomu is an officially licensed retailer bringing you authentic gaming merch from your favorite gacha games, including Hoyoverse games such as Zenless Zone Zero, Genshin Impact, and of course, Honkai Star Rail. Bahomu was kind enough to send me some super cool Aventurine merch. This time, it's an Aventurine themed watch. As you watch me unbox it, let me tell you a little more about Bahomu. Bahomu offers worldwide shipping, high quality merch, and fair prices. Their site has a huge selection of items from different games, clothing, accessories, collectibles, you name it. Now let's get back to the watch. This thing is absolutely gorgeous. It even came with a little extra Aventurine keychain. The watch itself feels super premium, the colors are spot on to Aventurine style in game, it's insanely stylish, and it's not only for display. Yes, you can actually wear it every single day as the timing is told on the watch and has a movable clock. So if you're into merch like this, be sure to use code PRETENDERHSR, spelled exactly as you see it, or hit the link in the description and or pinned comment for 10% off your orders site-wide. First, taking a look on an overview of Hysilens' kit. Her basic attack deals physical damage equal to 100% of her attack to a designated enemy. Her skill has a 100% base chance to increase damage taken by all enemies by 20% for 3 turns, and at the same time deals physical damage based off her attack to all enemies. Her ultimate will first deploy a zone, and every enemy within that zone will have their attack lowered by 15% and their defense lowered by 25%. Then will deal physical damage based off Hysilens' attack to all enemies. For every 1 instance of dot taken by an enemy target within the zone that Hysilens creates, she also deals physical dot equal to 80% of her attack to them and will trigger at the start of each turn or after 1 attack by an allied target up to 8 times. The effect cannot repeatedly trigger, the zone lasts for 3 turns and decreases by 1 at the start of Hysilens every turn, and when she's knocked down, the zone also will be dispelled. Her talent lets Hysilens have a 100% base chance to inflict an enemy with one of the following states, being any dot state anytime an allied target attacks. So when someone else on your team attacks, so let's say Kafka's skill, Black Swan basic, their ults even, Hysilens herself will have a 100% base chance to inflict wind shear, bleed, burn, or shock. It also will prioritize inflicting a state that the enemy target does not yet have. While in the dot state, the enemy target will take dot equal to 25% of Hysilens' attack for 2 turns anytime they do attack. And for bleed specifically, at the start of each turn, enemy target takes physical dot equal to 20% of their max HP up to 25% of Hysilens' attack for 2 turns. Her technique will create a special dimension that goes forward for 20 seconds. Enemies that are within the special dimension will be inflicted with Soul Struck. Enemies with that state will not be able to actively attack allied targets and rather will follow the dimension until it is gone. If you enter battle with enemies in the Soul Struck state, you'll have a 100% base chance to inflict each enemy target with 2 of the following states, being any of the dot states. It's also the equivalent one provided by Hysilens' talent effect, and only one dimension effect created by allies can exist at the same time. Her A2 will let Hysilens deploy a zone equivalent to the one provided by her ultimate at the beginning of battle for 3 turns, and also will let Hysilens recover 1 skill point anytime she deploys a zone, so now every time you do use your ultimate to deploy a zone, you will get a skill point back. Her A4 allows her to proc every dot on the enemy when they are hit by her ultimate. That allows her to immediately produce damage equal to 150% of their original damage. Her A6 will increase Hysilens' damage dealt for every 10% of effect hit rate that exceeds 60%. For that every 10%, you will get a 15% damage dealt increase up to a maximum of 90%. Hysilens' first Eidolon will increase the dot that allied targets deal to 116% of the original damage anytime she is on the field. At the same time, anytime Hysilens does inflict a dot state through her talent, you now have a 100% base chance to additionally inflict an instance of another dot state that is identical and can coexist with the original talent effect. Her second Eidolon, anytime her zone is active, the damage boost effect provided from the Trace the Fiddle of Pearls will now apply to all allies. So the trace that increased her damage dealt by her effect hit rate, getting up to that 90% damage dealt increase can now apply to your entire team. Her fourth Eidolon will reduce enemies all type res by 20% while her zone is active. And for her sixth Eidolon, while the zone is active at the start of each turn or after one ally target attacks. The maximum trigger count for her physical dot effect is increased to 12 and increases the multiplier of the damage dealt by 20%. So rather than 8 maximum stacks in a zone, it is now 12. And for each instance, the damage dealt will be increased by 20%. Now for Lightcones. The main reoccurring theme you're going to see here is mainly a Lightcone that does have effect hit rate, as she does have quite the big requirement. And without an effect hit rate Lightcone, that becomes a lot harder to achieve. And one of the best options is obviously going to be your own signature Lightcone, providing a 40% increase to effect hit rate. When an enemy target gets inflicted with a debuff by the wearer, there's an 80% base chance for them to enter the enthrallment state, lasting for 3 turns. Same types cannot stack. While in that state, for every 1 debuff applied by the wearer on the target, increases the target's received dot by 5%. Stacking up to 6 times. When the target gets attacked by an ally, increases the attacker's speed by 10% for 3 turns. And if the wearer gets knocked down, removes all enthrallment. 40% effect hit rate is going to be a lot easier to get to that 120% requirement. On top of that, the second part of the Lightcone does give access to making enemies receive more dot damage, which is going to be every dot character's main source of damage. So this is going to amplify the damage from her own dot inflictions, the ones that Kafka inflicts, the one that Black Swan, or whoever on your team is inflicting, they will have more dot damage dealt to that enemy. And to top it all off, it does give her some even more supportive capabilities by increasing the attacker's speed to anyone who is attacking the enthrallment enemy, which is going to be super good for hitting even faster thresholds. This also applies to Hysilens yourself, of course. So this can either make it easier for your other characters to be built, because now you can account for a 10% speed increase. So getting even more speed on your Kafka, who's usually built as fast as possible, that's great. Black Swan, more speed, that's great. Hysilens, more speed for herself, that's also great. So everything this Lightcone provides is super good, making it her best option. Another good option is Black Swan signature Lightcone, which also provides a 40% increase to effect hit rate. When the wearer deals damage to an enemy inflicted with a dot, each respectively grants 1 stack of profit, which stacks up to 4 times. In a single battle, only 1 stack of profit can be granted for each type of dot. Every stack of profit will increase the wearer's attack by 5% and enable their dot dealt to ignore 7.2% of the target's defense. As I mentioned, 40% effect hit rate is going to make her easier to build. Each individual stack can give the wearer profit. Hysilens can inflict every single dot, meaning you can get the full effect of this Lightcone practically right away almost. Very easy to stack it up, as you really just snowball the amount of dots you do need because you inflict them really fast. So you can get up to the 4 max stats of profit, and each stack gives you 5% attack and 7.2% defense ignore for the dot, giving you a 20% increase to attack and a 28.8% defense ignore for the dot damage, which is going to be great. Attack percent increasing all her sources of damage, and that extra 28.8% defense ignore is going to be super strong, especially paired with other forms of defense ignore and shred, which her kit has. If you have Black Swan on the team, she has it, Resolutions Lightcone, and so on. Another really strong option is going to be Xiaochu's signature Lightcone, providing instead 60% effect hit rate, so more than the last two. After the wearer uses basic attack, skill, or ultimate to attack an enemy, there's a 60% base chance to inflict unarmored on the target. In that state, the target receives 10% more damage for 2 turns. If they're under a dot state inflicted by the wearer, there's a 60% base chance to upgrade unarmored to the cornered state, which additionally increases the damage that enemy target receives by 14% for 2 turns, and during this period, the wearer cannot inflict unarmored on the target. So even more effect hit rate than the other ones obviously means it's way easier to get to the effect hit rate amount you do need. This does sacrifice a bit of her own personal damage, kind of, because you're making enemies take more damage, which also applies to her, but you're not getting stuff like attack percent or defense ignore or making them take more dot or whatever. But you're making them take 10% more damage and an additional 14% because she does inflict dots, so 24% more damage. Not only going to be good for her damage, but also your team. So it's a very nice Lightcone that Hysilens uses very effectively. Eyes of the Prey would be another option to use, as it does provide 20% effect hit rate and a dot increase of 24% at S1, and at S5 it's 40% increased effect hit rate with a 48% increase to dot. At S5 it's as good as the signature Lightcone, providing effect hit rate and also a big increase to dot damage, so a 48% increase is going to amplify all the forms of dot she is dealing. Very simple Lightcone here, it's just going to make her easier to build and also increase dot, which is going to be her entire source of damage. Now, when it comes to Lightcones to increase their damage as much as possible, while also not providing effect hit rate anymore, is going to be Kafka's signature Lightcone, providing 24% increase to the wearer's damage dealt, increasing the wearer's speed by 4.8% every time they do attack, stacking up to 3 times. If the wearer hits an enemy that is not inflicted by erode, there's a 100% base chance to inflict erode to the enemy. Enemies inflicted with erode are also considered to be shocked and will receive lightning dot at the start of each turn, equal to 60% of the wearer's attack for 1 turn. A lot harder to build Hysilens if you don't have an effect hit rate Lightcone, but this does increase damage dealt, which is going to be good for any source of damage he is doing. Also giving you up to a 14.4% increase to speed is also going to be good if you're trying to hit higher thresholds. And also another free dot to make enemies take more damage. Good Lightcone for damage, it just makes her a lot harder to build because you have no effect hit rate being provided, and is also still not just overall good as the other ones, but definitely a usable one. And another one is Good Night and Sleep Well, which will increase damage up by the wearer by 12%, stacking up to 3 times. That also applies for dot for every debuff the enemy target does have, and as 5, it becomes 24%. You'll practically always have over 3 debuffs on the enemy, especially with all the dot sources, so it just becomes a free 72% increase to damage dealt when you do have it at S5. So just a big damage increase. Unfortunately, also doesn't provide effect hit rate, so it's going to make her harder to build, but still is good for her damage. Now for relics. Unfortunately, Hysilens really only has one optimal option, which is really the only option you want to use, and that is 4-piece of the prisoner set. 2-piece provides a 12% attack increase, and the 4-piece for every dot the enemy target is afflicted with, the wearer will ignore 6% of its defense when dealing damage to it. And the effect is valid for a maximum of 3 dots. Attack percent is one of the only real damage increases you can get on a proper stat for dot characters, so the attack percent increase is nice, and this also gives you up to a 18% defense ignore, which is exceptionally good, especially on the more optimal dot teams, such as pairing the defense shred provided from Hysilens kit herself, something like Black Swan's skill defense shred, and also potentially even a Lightcone like Pearls of Sweat Lightcone, and so on. So on a dot team, especially on more optimal ones, even ones paired with other sources of ignore from a Harmony support, defense ignore / shred is also very good for dot characters damage, so that's why the 18% defense ignore this 4-piece does provide is extremely nice. Hysilens herself can inflict every single dot, so having the 3 uptime is extremely easy, and will practically be permanent for every enemy you are attacking, so it becomes a free 12% attack and a free permanent 18% defense ignore, which is why it is far and none the best option. As I mentioned, that really is the only 4-piece you want to use. You could use 4-piece of the physical set, but it's going to be a lot worse. 2-piece increases physical damage by 10%, and the 4-piece after the wearer attacks or is hit, their attack increases by 5% for the rest of the battle and stacks up to 5 times. Depending on how you build Hysilens, she might act a bit slower as opposed to someone like Kafka, but you can still stack this up, and that's also not including if Hysilens herself gets hit, then you can stack it up even faster. So up to a 25% increase to attack is going to be pretty nice. So the 10% physical damage increase and up to a 25% attack increase is nice, but it is significantly worse than the DAW option. If you're really down bad and you have to do 2-piece, then it mainly comes to doing 2-piece of one of the attack percent sets, and you can do another attack percent set. So 2-piece hero set, prisoner, musketeers, and also wind soaring. You can do 2-piece of one of those and 2-piece of the physical set as well, or 2-piece of any of those with 2-piece of the speed sets if you are doing a speedy Hysilens. So 2-piece hackerspace, relieved ordeal, or warrior goddess. I cannot stress how important it is to have a 4-piece prisoner set though. It is just far and none her best in slot, and is going to be the one you do want to run. You do have a bit more flexibility on the ornaments, thankfully, but her overall best in slot is going to be Revelry, which does increase the wearer's attack by 12%. When the wearer's attack is higher than or equal to 2400 / 3600, increases the dot damage up by 12% / 24% respectively. Free attack also makes it easier to get to the actual goal, so if you have 4-piece of the prisoner set and also this as the 2-piece ornament, that's a 24% increase to attack, which is going to be nice. 3600 attack does seem a bit hard to get, but with all the stuff you have when it comes to dot characters, especially with buffed Kafka, with the fact that she can give up to 100% attack, you will really have no problem hitting this. So it really becomes a 24% increase to your dot damage, which is the main source of damage in any dot team. The actual hit itself that they do isn't the important part, it is the dots themselves. So that getting a 24% increase is going to be very nice. Pan Cosmic is also an option you can use. This and the next option I'm going to mention isn't really that different. It really is in the 0.x amount of difference when it comes to percentages. And by that I mean total overall damage output. It really just depends on whatever pieces have better and if you can satisfy the other one requirement or this one requirement, which Pan Cosmic you'll be filling out. Providing 10% effect hit rate. Meanwhile, the wearer's attack increases by an amount that is equal to 25% of effect hit rate, up to a maximum of 25%. You need 100% effect hit rate to get the full 25% extra attack. This Planet Ornament also does provide 10% effect hit rate to make it a bit easier. This is good on Hysilens because you'll have no problem having the effect, because Hysilens, for her damage boost trace in her base kit, you do need a total of 120% effect hit rate anyways. A proper build Hysilens will be aiming for 120% effect hit rate, so the byproduct is you'll have the full effect of the Pan Cosmic set. So if you happen to have really good Pan Cosmic pieces while you are farming for Reverie, you can use it in the meantime. The other set, which is just as good depending on what setup you are doing, is Glamoth. 12% attack, and when the wearer's speed is equal to 135/160, wearer deals 12%/18% more damage. Again, as I mentioned, 12% attack is going to be nice. You'll always have the free 12% more damage increase, as usually even with that attack percent boot setup, you want to try to get to breakpoint speed anyways, so in this case you want to get to 135 rather than 134 to get the actual effect, since unfortunately speed does not round. If you have 134.9 speed, you're not going to get the effect. You need to have 135. And if you're doing a speed boot setup, or you have people on the team that buff speed, such as Ruan May's Talent or Fuofuo's E1, then getting up to 160 speed is a lot more doable, and that can give you up to 18% more damage. So Glamoth is also a very nice and usable option on her. The difference between Pan Cosmic and Glamoth isn't the craziest difference. Again, it's really in the point X territory, but Revelry is overall the best one you do want to use. The relic stats you do want to do are as followed. For the body, this does depend if you are using an effect hit rate Lightcone or not. Even if you are using an effect hit rate Lightcone, it's most likely you are going to be doing a effect hit rate body anyways, because you do want to satisfy 120% effect hit rate, which can be difficult. An effect hit rate body does provide 43.2% effect hit rate when you do have a 5-star max relic, and if you're running a Lightcone that provides 40% effect hit rate, then you have up to 83.2%. Her bonus traces give 10% as well, so that's 93.2%. So you need to get 26.8% through your substats, and if you're running Pan Cosmic, then that's 10% less. It's a lot doable when you have all that in mind. If you do have a effect hit rate Lightcone, and especially if you're using something like Xiaochu's Lightcone, which provides 20% over, so it gives 60% instead, so you need a lot less. If you do hit 120% effect hit rate without using an effect hit rate body, that is fantastic. Instead, you could use an attack percent body for even more damage. For the feat, attack percent is usually going to be the better play. It's the best for her damage. It makes it a lot easier to get the 3600 attack as well. Hysilens' base speed with all her trace tree active is 116, so you can straight up get to 134 or 135 if you're using Glamoth with attack percent boots. Now, if you just happen to have a really bad speed rolls, or you want to do a hyperspeed setup, then you can run speed boots to get that threshold that you do want. For the orb, you can either use physical damage or attack percent, just use whichever one is better. And for the link rope, attack percent is usually going to be the better play, but you can use energy regen to try to get more ultimates. Energy regen is usually going to be better if you do struggle with skill points on the team, so if you run into a skill point issue, then energy regen can help combat that a bit, because she is able to get a skill point back using her ultimate because of her bonus trace. But most commonly, and especially for her damage, attack percent is usually going to be what you want to do. For the substats, first, get effect hit rate to 120%. That is going to be the biggest goal. With an effect hit rate body and also an effect hit rate Lightcone, it's very doable, as I was talking about. That is going to be your first goal. Second is going to be a speed goal. If you are doing attack percent boots, try to get as much speed rolls to get to 134, or again, 135 if you're using Glamoth. And if you're doing speed boots, you're probably going to want to try to get to a hyperspeed setup if you are trying to go for that. If you're not going for a hyperspeed setup, you just happen to have really bad speed rolls on your relics and you're only doing it for breakpoint, then you're kind of done. But if you end up doing a speedy Hysilens with speed boots for that reason, you want to aim for 160.1 or higher. Past that is really just more attack, so attack percent or flat attack. If you are using Revelry, you want to get the 3600 in battle, so whatever actual things you can do, you can very much get it outside of battle. But remember, if you can't, you also do have the bonus trace from Kafka giving 100% attack, so just remember to keep that in mind. Anything past that really doesn't matter. You can just get more survivability stats, so HP percent, even defense percent, and effect res, so you may not get CC'd if you're doing a sustainless run especially. So anything past those main stats, once you do have the 120% effect hit rate requirements settled, and you do have the right speed, so 134 or 160.1 plus, and you also do reach the 3600 attack to activate Revelry if you are using it in battle, then you can just focus on more survivability. Now for some team building ideas. I don't have Hysilens on my account, so pretend Luca here is Hysilens. The second teammate is practically always going to be Kafka. There really is no replacement for her. You want them together. Kafka is the cornerstone and Hysilens is the second cornerstone. If you pulled Hysilens without Kafka, good luck. So these two would practically be the ideal pair that you always want to have. The third slot can depend. If you do want to do triple dot, the best third slot is going to be Black Swan. This would be the best triple dot setup, so Hysilens, Kafka, and Black Swan. And the last slot would depend if you are trying to do a sustainless run or a sustained run. If you're doing sustainless, the only two real supports is using Ruan Mei or Robin. If you're doing a sustained run, the best is going to be Huopo, especially if you can manage your skill points. But the team can be a bit skill point hungry at times, so you can very much run a speedy SP Gen Gallagher. You can very much do the same thing with someone like Lingsha as well. Lingsha works fantastic for it. Hell, even Luocho works good as a speedy build. Or if you really want, you can even use someone else like Aventurin. Really just use your best sustain. Again, the best install overall is Huopo. If not that, a skill point generator like Gallagher or Lingsha will do you good. Aventurin works fine just so they don't take damage. So mainly something like this. If you don't want to do a triple dot setup, you just want to have Hysilens, Kafka, and a third slot being a support, you would just sub out the third dot character for someone, as I mentioned, Ruan Mei or Robin. In this case, I'll just put on Robin. Or if you do have the third slot, you do want a triple dot, and you don't have Black Swan, you can just throw up your next favorite dot character. Like you can even use Guinaifen, Sampo, and so on. If you do happen to have an E2 Xiaochu, he would go fantastic in that slot. He is really good, especially at E2 for dot. Black Swan still can overall outperform, especially with their defense shred, but E2 Xiaochu is very, very strong in dot and can work well. Now, if you really don't have Kafka, but you do happen to have Black Swan, again, good luck. This is going to be tough. But you mainly would end up running Hysilens, Black Swan ideally. Third slot usually would go to a support rather than triple dot, because the only form of proc you really are going to have is Hysilens ultimate, and ideally you'll run her ERR in that situation. So a support to make up for more damage. So again, either of these two are pretty much interchangeable, but the two you do want to run. Last slot, again, sustain, and if you're doing sustainless, you can run them both. That can actually end up making the damage pretty good. But again, as I mentioned, Hysilens without Kafka is going to be very, very, very rough. And that does wrap up the full guide on Hysilens. I do hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did, dropping a like would be greatly appreciated. If you're new to the channel or haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe and turn the bell icon for future videos like this, along with all the types of style content. And I'll see you later. Peace out.